Hello, online people. Hope you can hear us okay. Oh, do you have the remote?
Yeah, the intersection. What's the stop sign?
Hello, everybody. Hello. How's it going? Okay.
There's Jane. Hi, Jane.
How are you feeling?
Well,
Good?
so
Good.
oh, better. Okay. Not quite, but I'm okay.
All right, for you online people, I can't always see the whole screen. So if you have something to say and I don't see you, somebody let me know. Okay.
We can't be putting you to sleep yet.
It's been a hectic day, so I don't feel ready. Forgive me. Thank you, everybody, for coming. Thank you, online people, for coming. We'll jump right into our discussion for The Life We Bury. What did we think about this as a read? Did you dive right in? Did it take a while to get into?
Good quick read and good pacing. Yeah, it was a fast read.
It was easy to read. It must have been very quick because I brought it back right away. And now I told her I can't remember what it was. But I loved it while I was reading.
And I told her just to listen for a while.
It'll come back.
to it.
That is funny. Things come back as
Yeah.
people are talking. Like, oh yeah, I remember this book now.
But you can't tell me the ending. I still have 40 pages left.
Oh,
too bad.
Too bad.
It's okay. It's okay. I already know that the sun.
We are not spoiler free here.
It's a totally new genre for me. I've read very few books that have as much violence, and there's a lot.
There is.
So not too many mystery books. You've not read too many.
Well,
Or police procedurals. It was a mystery.
well, I enjoyed it. It was interesting, and it is. I like books like this of this size and readability, and very good readability. And but I just did not know as much violence.
Now, I don't know if anybody else felt this way, but I don't necessarily like to read about violence, and I especially don't like to read about rape. But for some reason, the way this was written, it didn't bother me as much as some have.
Yeah, it wasn't.
Did anyone else? Yeah.
Yeah,
It wasn't. Yeah.
I mean, you know, that really happened.
it is a mystery. It is a, yeah. You expect some of it. Someone has to die.
Right. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
You know, have you read anything by Joe Nesbo? That's
that's
real violent.
Yeah.
This is an easy cake. I can't either. I can't. And they're good books, and I acknowledge them as such, but I can't read them anymore.
You can't read them.
It's like Criminal Mind. I couldn't watch anymore.
Yeah, so I just can't do it.
And what did we think of Carl Iverson? Did right away? Did you think he did it? Do you think he didn't? Because there had to be some more to the story to go.
That was right. Yeah, he couldn't have done it, otherwise we wouldn't have had a book.
Yeah.
Or if he did it, there had to be something, with it, because.
I don't know, right away, his personality didn't strike me as the kind who would have done this at all.
It was too mild.
Thoughtful.
So you kind of went in as Joe did.
Yeah. We're on his side.
Makes you wonder though, how many more people
There's a lot.
went through prison years that didn't commit a crime.
Too many.
Yeah.
Too many.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's kind of a scary thing because our justice system isn't infallible. So it's going to happen. And in this instance, he acted as though he was guilty because he felt guilty for the other crime,
Yeah.
which was too bad because the other guy went free for so long.
Well, and it was too bad he got killed in the end of son, because he should have suffered a little more.
There's an
Can you
end
sneak
here.
in or?
Oh, I can't sit on that for an hour.
With the red one or the walking?
No,
one?
you sit there. I'll sit here.
Well, I don't know. I want my back to you.
Nobody's sitting there.
All right. Sorry, that just got you a bench for an hour.
You know, I was just hearing on the news tonight that there were two people remember the two people who brought their guns out. They're very rich people and they brought their guns out and
Yeah.
black people were just quietly protesting, walking. And they've been pardoned by the governor of a state that still is holding people in jail with no parole for having a small amount of
Marijuana.
yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
Mm.
And the
He's
law,
running for
and the law
senator,
for
isn't he?
that has been off the books for 4 years, and these people are still in jail. So this happens all the time.
Mhm.
Innocent people.
So what state was that?
I know it's.
Was it Missouri?
Yeah. Somewhere in stuff. They have
He's
one
running
of
for
those
senator, isn't he?
old mansions.
Well, last I heard, he was gonna try to run for
Yeah,
senator.
he's running for office.
Anyway, it's not uncommon. So unfortunately,
Yeah, and with that, this book brought the Innocence Project,
Project, right.
which is an actual organization. Did anyone know about that or?
Yeah.
Okay. Maybe I was in the minority.
Oh.
A couple of movies have been out recently where that was featured.
Ah,
One of them was the Stephen Avery story.
oh,
Remember that?
yes.
I
yes.
lived through that one.
Mhm.
I mean, like he was really right nearby, and it almost makes me crazy to think that he's being brought up for innocence, because there's nothing innocent about this man.
Really?
And there never was, and there never will be. And if he gets off, it will be because of some weird technicality.
Mhm.
And that I find unfortunate, that a technicality is what makes something happen.
Mhm.
The way the girl died, being burned, reminded me of the Stephen Avery
Mhm.
murders. That came to mind right away.
It was near Appleton, actually.
Kiwani, something like that. You know, he said he went to jail because he felt guilty, really. And the life we bury, I thought both of them kept such a secret that they felt so guilty about, and they buried it. And what did it do to them?
Mhm. Mhm.
Not good.
Mhm.
Speaking of movies, this book would be great movie. I'm waiting for Hollywood. Somebody needs to pick it up.
Mhm. Mhm.
It's in production.
Oh, is it? Oh, okay. Well, there you go. I figured it would be.
That's good.
It's in production. I went to IMDb, and actually before even IMDb, somewhere I saw the author's dream cast. So I don't know that that's necessarily the cast that's in the movie, but he came up with his dream cast. And then I did go to IMDb, and they said it's in pre-production. And I couldn't get any more information because you have to be an IMDb Pro person, which you have to pay for. So, but anyway, apparently it's in production.
Pre-production can mean a lot of different things, but at least it's probably been bought as an option for a movie, which is, yeah, good sign.
But because it was a little, I mean, like when he gets in the trunk of the car, you know, and he manages to get his way out of the trunk, and then he manages to trek through the snow. I mean, a little bit of it was like, was a Hollywood. Exactly, exactly. And that's what I said. It will make a great movie. I wasn't sure I really felt like it was
realistic.
yeah, right, exactly. So that's why I mean, I liked the book. I like the story basically, but there were parts like that. And I thought, nah, that's Hollywood.
Right? Like, would anyone else like actually just go to these people's houses?
No.
The plausibility factor there.
Right?
Yeah.
Felt like
He's
I was
young.
watching a horror movie, like, don't go in there, don't go in there.
Exactly.
What about Joe? Did we like Joe?
Yeah, I like
So
I hated his.
Yeah.
Kind of a crazy family situation, wasn't it?
Crazy mother.
Yeah.
Why
Bipolar.
did he,
Hard to like that.
why he didn't
I mean, and that's another thing in this book, I just kept, why did he continue to leave his brother there? I mean, his brother was 18 and there would be services that he could have put his brother, you know, taking him, he could still go to school, he could be in school, but he would know that his brother was being taken care of in some sort of either halfway house or whatever, but he continued to.
But his mother wanted the money. for
Well,
the
of
brother.
course she did, but.
So he would have to have gone through a big fight to make that
Legal.
happen.
Oh, well.
Legally,
I would
right, probably,
imagine.
she was the mother.
Plus the whole, just knowing how his brother would react to being out of his normal routine. you know.
Right, but
So-
what his normal routine was pretty sad. And you say it would, but when she was arrested, I mean, the number of times she'd been arrested and put in there would still, I would think that he could have gotten his brother removed from that situation.
I don't think he was willing to fight the good fight.
No,
And
probably not.
and he liked the fact that he was removed,
Well,
you know,
first
that.
he wanted to escape himself.
Yeah, sure, of
I
course.
mean, he was a
I get
young man
Which was off, which,
at 18.
Sure.
off
Wanted
to college,
to
right, and
He
he
was
was
get
able.
away from the whole thing. So
True.
then he realized his son was, or his brother was in jeopardy, so then he finally could figure it out, but he didn't have anyone to take care of him when he was away either, until he hooked up with him.
And he's so young himself,
Mhm.
you know, he doesn't know all the things that are available, I don't think.
Again, that was why to me this was a little too Hollywoody.
I mean, I taught a lot of autistic
I don't think he
students, and
wanted
once
to do
they
it to
left
his brother.
school At 21, there really wasn't anything for them.
Right. Go ahead, Janet.
School till 21.
Something that I really liked about it is that I liked all of the major characters. I liked Lila and I liked Joe and I liked Carl Iverson. And I don't know, I assume this is true for some of the other people in the room. There are quite a few novels that I've started that were probably actually better written in terms of the quality of the writing, but that I put away because nobody was likable. There wasn't, if there's not one likable character, if there's, I'm sure all of us were rooting for Joe. I agree with the person who said so much of it was unrealistic. The getting out of the trunk scene was absolutely ridiculous. I mean, I don't care how clever he was half dead. He wasn't going to get out of that trunk. But setting that aside, I think it's easier to read something, especially something that's such a page turner, when we as readers are rooting for the main characters. And that's how I felt about these characters. That's all.
Thank you. Yeah, what about Joe and Lila? They both had such like kind of tough backgrounds. Did that help you feel for them, understand them?
Feel for them.
No. Did it
I just took it as a book.
yes.
Can't read too much into it.
Not too in depth. Do you think they'll be a good couple? Do you think they'll last? Do you think they have enough in
I read too
common?
many of the following books, so I know what's.
So you have, yeah, you have.
Yeah, I read the
I know
second.
a few of you have, so no spoilers for those.
No,
Yes, he's written, how
The
many?
Shadows
Two?
Reach.
So there are 5 with Max Rupert and Joe Talbert. But the author himself says my books are not necessarily a series, but rather character arcs that revolve around a small community. Mhm.
But he refers back to the characters and their
Yeah.
backgrounds and what happened.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, so.
So it's still connected enough. Yeah. And this is the first. He did in 2019, he wrote one that's considered pre this, but this was the first one he wrote. And there is one coming out in September 2021. I don't think that's part of this series, though. I think that's a standalone or this not series, as he says.
Collection.
Just call it, yeah. These characters. Yeah.
It's kind of neat though, when they have the characters in other books and you can kind of have some background knowledge on them.
Mhm.
I thought it was interesting, you know, the 2 characters and the baggage that they carried. When they went to see the play, The Glass Menagerie, I kind of had the same situation. I went with my husband to Writers Theater and we were in the first row, very small theater. And after the end of it, he said, you know, if I knew this was going to be about a dysfunctional family, I could have just gone to see my sisters. Gotten the same effect. So that really hit me when he had so much emotion. And the actor, he felt like he was speaking directly to him.
Did anyone else think, I don't like to be a Debbie Downer here, but didn't you think this was simply, what do they call it? A Hallmark movie in the making, but much darker, too dark for Hallmark? I mean, everything worked out for these people, except maybe the mother. I mean, wouldn't it have been refreshing if Carl actually did commit the murder? You know, didn't you? Didn't?
I thought it was refreshing that all these people had everything come out their way. After some of the books we read.
I just, from the get-go, didn't you know exactly how this was going to go?
Yeah.
Except maybe some of the background details were missing. It just was clear how it was headed. A bit darker than Hallmark movies because of the violence, and I don't know. I just thought there were too many pat endings. Like the couple getting together, Joe and Lila, and then they have Jeremy with them, and that's all working out hunky-dory. My gosh, they got money, $120,000. I mean, how Hallmark movie is that? Carl didn't commit the crime. He died the night he finds out. He at least could have died before he found out, I don't know. I just thought the whole thing was, I enjoyed it. I read it, or sort of, and it was just, I just really felt that it was so utterly predictable that I just waited for it to unfold instead of having any surprises. I wasn't surprised by one thing in that book.
No, I thought Carl's background was a little bit surprising. Yes, we knew he was suffering from something, but to really learn about what he faced in Vietnam, I thought was not something maybe I wasn't shocked because we all know the horrendous things that went on in Vietnam. But for someone who didn't live in that generation, like all of us have, and read that book, I think that could have been something maybe they weren't aware of what someone suffers when they watch the atrocities. I know my son watched atrocities in Iraq, very similar to what Carl did. And so unless you've lived that or you've heard about it from someone else, I thought that was one thing I thought was pretty good in the book, was going through and reliving what Carl lived through and why he constantly felt guilty. And a lot of our vets do. They feel guilty when they see things that they cannot control. And that's why they suffer PSAT or thank you.
PSTD,
Yeah. Thank you.
Letters in there.
And I also like the way they puzzled out. They teased out the code and how they puzzled out and the couple of twists with the father thinking the father did it and then the son did it. I thought those weren't totally predictable.
But yes, I think we agreed it was movie. It's Hollywood. We've all, several of us have said it's very Hollywoody.
Jane, I like your title, Too Dark for Hallmark. I think that could be it. That's a channel all on its own.
As I was listening to Jane, the word that kept popping up, which I thought the whole time I was reading it, is that it was formulaic.
Yes.
It was formulaic fiction. And he's just, in the way I read it actually when I was in Bailey's Harbor. And I kept saying to my husband, this is an enjoyable read, but it is so formulaic. It's so predictable. And the way, and I haven't read anything else by this author, but my take on it is he wrote a good story, but he's just not a very sophisticated writer. I mean, when you think of other current fiction and what other novelists are writing, this was, to me at least, just much more simplistic than that. I do agree that the most interesting subplot was what the woman sitting next to Tracy just said. Yes, I'm sorry, don't know your name. that
Right.
finding out why Carl was so docile during the trial and why he didn't defend himself, that was something I kept wondering about. And that to me was in fact, well, not totally surprising, certainly really a well-written aspect of it, what he'd seen and how guilty he felt about not stepping forward the first time. So.
And I felt like that was more the mystery than the whodunit part.
Right.
But the why was Carl so guilty and what, you know, what had he experienced?
I think this is a good example of why mystery writing is a genre, and they don't frequently step up beyond the genre into literature. There are some mystery writers who come very close to literature. I don't know. I can't think of any at the moment, and maybe P.D. James and some of hers, but
Yeah.
but you know, that's a mystery. It's a genre, but it has risen above it. And I think this is a great example of a genre, the mystery genre. It's fun to read. Things evolve. There's enough violence to keep you thinking, oh my gosh. But and then there's nastiness going on. So you can have a debate about the difference between murder and killing, you know, war and murder and so forth. But it just doesn't step up. And I think that's what you're saying too. It's, you know, it's there, it's fun, and there's a lot to discuss, but it just doesn't quite reach an upper level in its writing.
Right. Anyone here?
I agree with all of you that it makes a better movie than a book, and try listening to it. This is one that I wish I'd had the book rather than the audio. Because on the audio book, I'm reading, I mean, it just was endless, getting out of the trunk and doing all this, and the reading of it, literally, I would have preferred it to be the page turner mystery, you know, where I could have just read and you know, turned those pages and found out what happened and had a good fun read. Listening to it was a bit much, and I think it will make a much better movie.
So I wonder if any of his later books got more sophisticated.
Well, we have some that
You've read.
But they're not, this one has a lot of people in it. I mean, in the beginning, I'm like, oh my goodness, no, another one. But the other books seem to be like more streamlined. At least that seems to be my opinion.
Are they also?
Cynthia's been trying to get something in here too.
I would be interested in if we could go around saying our birth date, because I think that this is one that what is being lived and looked at and then is very much that a 10-year difference is it's a different war, a different enemy, a different something or other. But I was born in 42. And I think that it was more shocking to me. So this was a very violent book for me to read.
But the author was in Afghanistan, right?
Oh, was he? Yeah.
Yeah, I think I read that. So he knows all about war. He wasn't in Vietnam though.
No, he would have been, yeah,
But
he
this
would have been
being
too
said
young.
because Al and I, you know, took our baby in down that one when our baby was about 6 months old, that we went down on a Sunday morning to get the New York Times, and I said, we will not eat until we have written to our elected representatives. And so Al and I were doing that as two people when, you know, really toward the beginning. And so I think that our things were explored. It came up to be, this was surprising. This had a lot that I didn't know, but I think it was because it was before. I don't know whether it's before or after. But I think there's a correlation.
It depends on how much you were involved in Vietnam yourself, you know, you protested if you, I was very involved, you know. because of all
How
the
close it was to you on whatever level,
you know,
yeah.
and,
I was marching.
Yeah.
I was true. Yeah, me too. We were doing.
You know, there's violent incidents in here, you know, there's description of what happened in Vietnam and everything. But I didn't feel like it was a violent book. I mean, it just didn't strike me as a, you know, a lot of violence, a violent book, because it was just part of the story, what happened to them.
Maybe some of us have read books that are just a lot more violent than this.
Read about the Sand Creek Massacre or any of the horrible annihilation of any native tribe. And the violence is much worse, where they're cutting off breasts off of women. They're taking, you know, ears, which is what they did in Vietnam. That was one of the more, it was like a bounty, you know, you cut off an ear, show it to your officer. It just, you know, human beings are not nice people, and
Right.
It's the life we bury is probably that strain of violence that we don't want to acknowledge all the time, and it's still going on, and it's been going on for millenniums, and it'll continue. It just will, because people are screwed up.
It's why Capitol Police are committing suicide.
Yes, there's
Experienced
six
violence.
policemen have already, it was it 6 or 7?
Well, 2 more recently.
Yeah, from the January 6th event.
Well, the book I'm reading now, I find very disturbing because of what happened to these people, the beekeeper of Aleppo or something, and what happened, you know, just killing people, you know, just striking them, you know, just killing, gunning them down and everything. Now that to me is, so far, it's very depressing. I don't know how far much further I'm gonna go, but I know it must be a good story. They're gonna discuss it in Sister Bay.
The beekeeper of Aleppo?
Yeah,
Yeah, that's a very interesting story.
yeah.
Yeah.
So this book did
It
have
sounds-
so many,
sounds so disturbing.
this book had so many different themes
Yeah.
that we could pick apart and look at and discuss. Was there any that did kind of resonate with anyone?
I think the killing versus the murdering was a big thing. And I mean, I never was in the war, obviously. But it must be a problem for people when they have to kill in the war and to compare it, yeah.
Well, and the guilt, you know, to live with that guilt and keep it a secret, you know, what it does to you.
But typically, people who were in the war never talk about it. I mean, at least outside.
You know,
It seems like though, as they get older, they start talking about
Really,
it.
they're not the ones thinking.
I was interested in Joe's situation with a mother who had an addiction and what that does to families. And how well, in my mind, kind of how he was pretty strong about it. I thought, I kept imagining, what would I do? Would I keep running away? I think I might have. I wouldn't have felt the same. He almost felt some loyalty to her. And I don't know that I would have had that same feeling. I understood his loyalty to his brother, but also his conflict about wanting to do better in life for himself. And if he didn't do better for himself, how is he going to do better for his brother eventually? But that theme, and that was one of the themes I felt like was about addiction and what it does to families and how difficult it is to stop that, especially when the person doesn't have a desire to, or doesn't know how to get started on breaking that.
The reason she got addicted though was because she was bipolar. And this
Yeah,
was
so
to
it's mental
medicate
health,
herself.
right.
So I mean, she medicated,
Oh, yeah.
treated herself in the wrong way.
And that happens.
I
a
mean, the
lot.
problem was she was bipolar.
Yeah, and that does happen.
But there are a lot of bipolar people actually around, and they don't all get
Yeah.
addicted.
Well,
Yeah.
she refused to be seek any help. She was never even
She didn't take
diagnosed.
her
Right.
medicine.
Was never given medicine. She was never even, she would never even go to anyone to diagnose her, so.
But why did, I would have left her in jail. I wouldn't have given up my
Yes.
college money and gotten her out of jail if I'd been Joe.
Yeah.
I would have thought about it.
That's why
Yes.
I'm surprised by his loyalty.
Yeah,
Doing this.
oh, man.
I
And
didn't
that's
consider it loyalty though. I considered it stupidity at that point. Enabling behavior.
Jamie, yeah.
Abused children and spouses generally remain loyal, like in that same way. So I didn't find that really that surprising. I thought the description of how he finally gave in was actually one of the richer things in the book in terms of, I mean, he didn't give in right away. It just was, she just badgered him and just beat him down. And it's sort of a same old pattern.
Yeah.
But he'd gotten himself into college and he was on that road. And that's again why I know you said that it would have been hard to get his brother away from his mother, but I think after she'd been arrested and all that sort of thing, I think social services or somebody, hopefully.
Know about that.
Stepped in and
But that was one of the major dilemmas in the book. It related to the death of his grandfather and what his grandfather had said to him about you will be he didn't want to be really caring for his brother, and he really didn't want to do that. He just wanted to be separate from it. And we kept hearkening back to what the grandfather had said before he died. So, I thought that was one of the major themes really in the movie, is how he came around to that he was really there from the beginning, willing to take that on.
He had really set some goals for himself, having a part-time job, saving his money to go to school, getting it all set up, because I'm sure his mom didn't help him at all with any of that. I mean, that's a lot to do on your own as a 17, 18-year-old student. Yeah, so I really like how he kind of set goals and then pulled himself up.
which is why he got out of the trunk.
He made a coat out of towels.
He was watching MacGyver.
I don't know, I'm interested in how other people do this. Going back to Tracy's question. For me, if I'm reading nonfiction and there are all these themes of incest and rape and murder and mental illness, and I go down those rabbit holes much more quickly than I do when I'm reading fiction. I mean, yes, all those themes were there, but this wasn't like reading The Glass Castle or that J.D. Vance book or those other nonfictions, accounts of these lives. So I think in those books, and it's one of the reasons, by the way, I mean, I set aside most really difficult reading during the Trump years. I just did. It was like just too much. So I followed the Cubs, who just broke my heart, and I didn't read a lot of difficult literature because daily life was complicated enough. So I don't know if I'd be curious. Do other people read differently about these themes if it's fiction compared to nonfiction?
Yeah, that's a good question. If it's fiction, does your mind kind of make that switch? Like, well, this isn't real, so it doesn't hit you as hard, or?
I don't, because the situations have been based on such things that are real. So no, I don't feel any less stressed by reading a fiction story as knowing that it's true. I mean, they both bother me.
When I read these books, I'm reading it for the plot. I'm all about the plot. Mysteries are my favorite books anyway. And so I'm like you're saying, I'm not delving down into the themes. I'm just getting to the next part of the story.
I read until 2:00 in the morning. Because I want to know, yeah. But I thought language-wise, I thought he did describe some of the countryside and the winter I thought he did it. It was beautiful in
You
places.
could tell it was Minnesota, couldn't you?
Yes, I like that part.
Mhm. What did anybody think about Carl saying he had a dying declaration he wanted to share? You think that's true? People that know they're going to die, are they more likely to tell the truth even after so many years? Is that?
I think they might. They're not gonna tell everybody, but they may tell people that are related to the situation.
You think so?
I think so.
He got really close to Joe too, I think,
Yeah.
through that give and take. And so, yeah, I think maybe he was ready to give it up and tell him the end story.
What was the time span on this from start to finish? Recall how much time it was?
About a semester.
No, he was coming up to the midterm, and he didn't have anything written yet, and he didn't have any idea. And then by the end of the semester, he kind of had this done, so had to be within a semester, so within 16 weeks. You know, and he got a late start according to what he said at the beginning, so maybe we're talking 10 weeks, I don't know.
And what illness did we attribute that Carl had? Was it pancreatic?
Yeah.
It was just pancreatic cancer. My sister just died from pancreatic cancer. So as I was reading this, I was thinking about how she would react and what shape she was in. And Carl wouldn't have been around that long. Carl would have been gone a lot sooner from that particular. He wouldn't have been able to stay with it through a lot of this, to show you the truth.
I think that is one of them that gets hit pretty quick.
Oh, yeah.
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 What did you think about the fact that the nursing home staff, when they discovered that Joe had discovered that he was probably innocent, that they moved him to a nicer room and they became nicer?
Nice to him. Nice.
Yeah. I don't know. That was something that I just thought was felt guilty.
Oh, I think that could happen.
Mm-hmm. I do too. They thought he was a murderer of a
Yeah,
young
just a
girl.
monster.
So, yeah. That could be very true.
Oh, I thought it could be true. I just didn't like the fact that it happened.
Human nature again.
I mean, I actually agree with you because typically in nursing home, the health changes so much. I doubt that they really always know the background of the residents, so.
That's the Hallmark movie part.
Although I'm sure the story of who he was would spread through the workers pretty quickly, yeah.
We haven't talked about Virgil. He was very loyal.
He did have one loyal friend, yeah, Virgil. Virgil was kind of an interesting character himself.
Carl saved his life, so why wouldn't you be loyal to that person, you know?
Mhm.
Why didn't he speak up more? During the trial.
You know, I read it too long ago. Was there a reason? Did Carl speak up and they
Yeah, I
didn't?
don't think
and they
Carl
didn't?
wanted him to, or.
Carl wanted a fast trial, I know.
Right, yeah.
Like,
He wanted to test.
They didn't want.
Well, the attorney, I think it was the attorney didn't want him to testify.
And he maybe didn't want that story to come out. in the
Maybe,
Trial, you know,
maybe,
right.
it might have been
That was it.
sensationalized in the media and, you know, it's hard for those Vietnam vets to live with some of that stuff that happened.
Yeah, trials. I only went to, I was called,
Jury.
jury duty once. And I was amazed that it what seemed to me the most important part of that wasn't permitted in the trial. I'm like, what? What is this? Yeah, I don't know.
So Carl also got Joe to open up about the secret he had buried with his grandfather.
Yeah.
Why?
See, I thought that was a little thing. That was like a kid might think like that, but then as he got older, you would have thought he understood it better. I don't know.
But he never told anybody about it. He
Right.
just internalized it, you know, for all those years. And so.
How old was he when that?
11.
He was 11.
Yeah, that's pretty
I
traumatic.
think how many things like that probably happen in people's lives.
Very traumatic. And if you're a young child, it must be just awful if you think you were part of something that killed.
I mean, you couldn't really talk to your mother about that, could you?
No, not my mother.
Right,
She'd be
right.
sympathetic, I'm sure.
I think
Right.
that was just a really good example of the kind of guilt that particular age child would have felt. His grandfather had just told him about cleaning up the boat, never leaving anything around, and he just tossed his soda bottle in the bottom, you know, so he always felt responsible. I mean, I thought it made, that one made a lot of sense to me. I didn't think it was exaggerated at all or too much. I just think that would be a hard guilt to shake, knowing you were just told not to do that. And at 10 or 11, you should know better that your action had some consequence. And then having to watch him, you know, go under. And he also had a moment of not doing the right thing to save him. You know, there was something that he knew better, but in a panic, he didn't do the right things either to save him. So, yeah, tough one, really tough one.
I was curious about how Carl knew that he should kind of probe.
I was
Joe
gonna bring
about
that
that.
up.
How did
Yeah.
he know that that was a story that Joe should tell?
He asked him something, and he knew he had hit a nerve because he didn't want to talk about his grandfather.
Right.
But I wonder what made did Carl think, I know it'd be better for you if you tell the story, or what made Carl kind of go after that story though, is what I wondered.
Just exactly what it's tit for tat.
Yeah.
You know, if you're gonna
Guilt
answer.
is
Share.
He said, if you tell me what's wrong,
Then
why
I'll
I
tell
hit a
you.
nerve, and you tell me the truth, then I'll tell you the truth.
Right.
So little test.
We'll test, yeah, yeah.
Which was also his way, I think, of building that bond between the two of them.
Yeah.
You think if Joe had known all of this when he went in, would he have just picked someone else to write his biography about?
Would have been easier.
Yeah.
It was sort of sad where they said, you know, the other people wouldn't remember their life, you know? And when we do the scan birthday party, you know, groups take a month, you know, and our church does a month. And then they give their bio. They have very interesting lives. And, you know, you think, wow, I didn't think that would happen, you know, that would be them.
I can't remember. Why did he choose to do his bio?
I don't remember either.
It didn't say his grandparents weren't living, so he didn't have a grandparent that he could go and talk to. And so I think somehow, how did he get connected with the nursing home?
I think he just stopped there. I don't
He
think
thought
it's-
that they would have an interesting long life. And then they said, well, a lot of people here don't remember their life, but Carl.
Yeah, he was sort
Does
of
anyone have
directed
the
it that
book?
way.
What was the exact assignment? It said, the way the assignment was worded led to that. Does anyone have it in front of her? The book?
Yeah, I don't know that I'd find it though. But it sounded like the entire class was a biography class.
Just a
right?
biography.
Yeah. I don't know how specific it got. I don't remember
I
that.
think it was just, I'm supposed to write a biography. And he said some people would ask their family or, you know, but he didn't have anyone under the circumstances to ask. So he went to the nursing
It
home.
says, I have to interview an old person, an elderly person, and write a biography, you know, tell about the struggles and forks in the road that made them who they are.
Thank
So
you.
it did have to be elderly, so that maybe is what led him to the nursing home.
Thank you.
We're in the nursing
Any of
home right
us.
there.
Speak for yourself.
I'm going to say goodbye to all of you. Thank you for including me in this group again. I had knee surgery last week, so I need to go lie down. So thank you
Rest up.
so much. Nice to see all of you. Bye-bye.
Feel better.
Bye.
Feel good.
So those that did read some of his other works, do you feel he's as much change? Does he progress as an author?
Yeah. Another mystery with a murder. Yeah, I like that one.
Mhm.
I like
I
some
like that
books
better.
better than others.
Yeah, just read this one. and
Most of
another
them
one
are
about,
as
so,
complex as this one.
I mean, they're not literature now, but they're
But
good
this was, but
mysteries.
this was good compared to the other ones also, or you thought the other ones you liked a little better?
They were different, that one read the two, they were different stories. I found the other one easier to follow than this one. That could have just been the time frame I was reading it too, you know, whether I had an hour to read or 10 minutes here, 10 minutes here, too, sometimes that. But I have not read any of his other ones. I would. Mysteries.
Do people have an idea what men in their lives would think about the book, whether they think, oh, that is the way it was? Or, because I don't think that they're still talking to it. I don't think that men just go and say to each other, so, you know, where were you in, you know, that year? And so I think of how people get together. I thought that the book club that this group was going to have was mostly men who were going to be talking about how they manage their time.
Oh, interesting.
There. And but just from the little reading thing that I had. And so it's been a surprise. And I can't figure it out, but it's very, I'm in 2 other book clubs. And this one is very different.
In what
Yeah. I think that there's a lot of pressure, and it may be easing off now, but to read the book, you know, that there are places where they get mad if you don't, and then other places where you read what you do, and then that's what's in the soup is all that stuff, that you don't lament the fact that not everything is there. But I think that the stories are, I just don't know what men would do with this book, whether they would think, it's telling me the stuff that happened that I didn't know. You know, I saw it from this angle, and I didn't know the larger idea. And so I think that would be an interesting thing to know.
In terms of how Carl was feeling, you mean? Or in terms of the larger picture, in terms of the.
I don't know about how that you've got to go along. You know, that I think that's one of the myths of our country is that we create, but that was certainly not the people we knew, you know, the couple we knew that had to change their date because the date of the wedding, because when the time that the drawing things came down. So you know, we were sitting in a room, you know, we're waiting to see what those numbers were going to be. And so that was, but then after the fact, I'm interested is we have several friends who are men who were very successful, and that they went and served the two years in professional jobs that had set them up for a lot of success, you know, in banking or things like that. So that they were, but then we also had Al's person who cut his hair and our children, the boys' hair. That was to me, they were just a big mystery. And I saw them as the fact that they went, I blamed them for. You know, I mean,
you did?
I just thought, that's too bad, and only later did I know that, no, he didn't.
Well, no, it was a
So
poor
you're-
man's war. It was a
Mhm.
people of color and.
So you're wondering how, if there were some men in the group who had read this book, if they would have, how they would have been affected by the war part of the story?
Or if it was at a group that all the men there were readers, and then out of that discussed it.
Oh,
So, but I think that
I'm sure
it
that
is,
would.
our son, Bruce, he was born in January of that important year. And he, 20 years later, he said to me once, Mom, did you know that they say, oh, Vietnam, did you know that they did something and people were doing this and this? I said, yes. So were your father and me. We were in those parades at the edge, and that we were at that place. But I just thought that it was so funny that Bruce had no idea that.
but you never talked about it
When
they were growing up.
I don't think that Ellen and I did talk about, I don't think our children would have. No, we were very much in the what is now and what are we going to do? And we got so much time and so much money. You know,
As
that
parents
what
are
are we going to do?
That's why
We're gonna bridge it. It was not.
No bedtime story?
How I Met Your Mom.
Yeah.
We were protesting the war.
Don't you think there's a basic difference quite often in how women and men perceive and read stories anyway? How you know, we could all read a book and come across with a little bit different look at it, but it might be the feminine look. The masculine look would quite often be very, very different, I think, as to what was the most important and what was motivating and the rest of it.
Todd, are you able to comment? Not to put you on the spot for all the male species, but.
Well, men talk about things way different than this. My feeling, I agree with Jane Whitney, that the book was completely contrived. It seemed like some of the stuff was full of baloney, and you could almost predict what was going to happen. And if somebody told me a story like that, I think I'd say you're full of shit, basically.
Oh, there's the difference.
And do you know, they've done studies, there are differences, you know. One of the things that people have noticed over and over is, for instance, soap operas, which are stories that go in circles and are built entirely on relationships. That's what women watch. Now, these are generalizations, and then the sports pages are aimed at men because they tend to go from point A to point B. And they have done just any number of studies on the difference that women approach stories and men approach stories, what their interest is, what they want to take away from it, which is what Todd just demonstrated.
Right.
That, you know, so I think, yes, men bring different things to stories, depending on, of course, who they are. And these are huge generalizations, but they do find that women relate differently to stories and men relate to different stories. You know, men have friendships and they may share things, but they frequently don't sit across the table to share things. They'll take a walk in the woods,
right,
and they go side by side to share things. Whereas women will sit across and have a cup of coffee and share things. So there are some basic differences, whether they're cultural or, you know, inherent, hardwired. I don't know about that because clearly the studies are all Western studies. But there are differences, and it's not just based on experience.
Well, Jane, I can comment to that. Certainly, if we talk about Vietnam, for instance, when I went to Cher's, what high school
40th.
reunion was that? I don't remember.
40th.
And so all us men sat around and talked about Vietnam. Now, there was no woman that was going to talk about any of that sort of thing. And I got more out of these guys talking about that than we would talk about, you talk about hunting, you talk about some sports and that sort of thing. But it was way different than, because Cher said, what'd you talk about? And I said, well, we talked about Vietnam and we talked about hunting and these sorts of things. Oh, well, I didn't know about that. So it's that sort of thing. Yeah.
It's concrete and it's not the relationships.
Right.
And you might not have had that conversation at a 20th or a 15th reunion.
Right. Exactly.
It took the 40th reunion.
Well,
it took the 40th reunion before you might have talked about it. Hard
Well,
to say,
right.
but
you go through a lot of crap. You went through a lot of stuff between the time you were in Vietnam and then 40 years later, basically.
Right.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So how do we look at male and female authors? Who are they writing their stories and their books for? Are they writing them for women? Are they writing them for men?
They're writing them for the commercial market.
That's what editors are for.
Right. That's exactly.
That's what editors are for. That's why genre writing is so popular. Right. It appeals to different people, and some authors appeal to both clearly in their authorship, their writing, their styles. Others are strictly one way or the other. I don't ever intend to read a Jack Reacher. My husband loves it. It's his escapist reading. Whereas I will read a mystery. I'll even read those funny little mysteries that have recipes in them, for God's sakes, and I don't cook. But it's a totally different, it's a totally different way. It's just different. And you have editors that will help you with that. They promote them that way. But I think clearly there are authors who go for both, and they do it successfany. But that's because they're combining different aspects of both male and femaleness in their writing. The other stuff is formulaic, and that's where the formulaic stuff comes from sometimes, I think.
I'm interested in how many of us have seriously started writing books and then may have fizzled out early, but
fizzled out early, yes. Oh, Tracy.
Yeah, I mean, I've tried a couple of times.
I got one chapter done.
Okay.
That's impressive. Yeah, that's pretty good.
Without laundry after about 4 years.
Tracy, when people that take out books out of the library, is there a predominance of male or female, or is that not something that?
Here, especially, it's quite a mix, probably more leaning on the female side.
But not overwhelming.
But not overwhelmingly, no.
And do men check out more nonfiction and women check out more fiction, or?
Well,
I can answer that. I can answer that question. If you asked how many books I get from WizCat, it's almost all nonfiction, and most of it is science. See, I write science articles, so most of what I read is other parts of science, and then after that, Oh, did you bring that book? Did you bring that?
No, I got the physical geography of Wisconsin.
Oh, okay.
That's a great book.
So I can't. It is. It's very interesting, and I stay awake for these things. But anyway, the point is that I cannot talk. I can't talk to Cher or very many other people about some of the books that I read because they're a little bizarre. Yeah, they're a little bizarre. So.
You're a niche reader. Like we just went from the beginning to the end. It wasn't like this person giving a chapter, and this person giving a chapter. We're going back over here, and they're going back over here. So it's nice just to read something straight through.
That's
true.
Yeah, and it was easy to read. I mean, it was probably about a 4-hour read, so it didn't take very long. But
did you say that was the physical geography of Wisconsin?
No. The book I'm reading,
Yes, I did. Yes.
the book I'm reading right now is about quantum mechanics. So and all the math that goes along with that. So
Save it for me. Can't wait.
If you ask Tracy what I check out, it's those sort of books. That's what I usually get.
Well, someone has to.
Right. I'm keeping the scientists alive. That's right.
Well, did anyone like this enough that they'll continue reading more by this author?
I thought it was a nice sequel to the one that we read before about the hermit. I thought that was just like, oh yeah, I thought it was a nice segue.
Is it something you would recommend to anyone in particular, or?
I would if they like mysteries.
I wouldn't really, no, I mean, I thought it was an easy book to read and so are all the other books.
I only recommend it because it's a group, it's a book club that reads only mysteries.
Oh, well, there you go.
I said, how about this one? Yeah, and I'm not in it. but, yeah. I don't know that I do.
It's a good group. It's a good group. I'm in that.
Are you in that? Oh, there you go.
Any last comments on The Life We Bury that anyone didn't get to share that would like to?
To me, it read more as nonfiction than fiction. And what I value in books is beautiful language. And I didn't see beautiful language in this, and there wasn't a need for it. I get it. That's not what it's about. But it's probably why I read very little nonfiction and way more fiction.
I'd say not bad for a first book.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
I like that it was in Minnesota and part of the ring where they were running around with the Hubert Humphrey campus, and our middle son got his master's degree at the Hubert Humphrey School. So we know exactly where that was. It's reading like one paragraph, you know.
Kind of want to bring back our star ratings, see what you guys thought.
Yeah, that's right. One of these days.
I appreciated being introduced to a new mystery author. I use mystery writing as my in-between fun, light reading. So I appreciate finding new mystery authors. I might read them in a while, but not right away. There has to be a break.
Well, there's two different series, Cheryl. There's one that follows the policeman and then there's one that follows Joe.
Okay.
Yeah. So,
And the heavens may fall as the policeman.
Okay.
The heavens may, if you got a copy here, it must be out right now, but.
Well, yeah, the others are mostly about the police.
yeah.
Man.
I think he's written
Oh, you
5
sent
novels
them all
listed as
three.
stories.
Yeah, I'll put it in the next one there too. Do we want to think about reads for the future or save that for next time?
And you got some more examples right there?
We've got two more. We've got 2 more months selected. Next month is Interior Chinatown, followed by American Dirt the following month. So.
American Dirt will be cheerful.
Happy reads. I do have a few suggestions if you want to go through them. And, yeah. Online people, forgive me, this could probably get awkward. I'm just gonna slip behind you. Okay. All right, I have a few fiction, a few nonfiction. Starting with The Night Watchman. I don't know if you guys can see that at all, but The Night Watchman. Some of you.
Did it win the Pulitzer this year?
It won the Pulitzer this year, yes.
I like the research.
Yes.
Oh,
It is a novel, but it's based on the extraordinary life of Louise Erdrich's own grandfather, Thomas
I love her.
Wise. He was a night watchman at a plant in rural North Dakota. He was also a Chippewa council member who is trying to understand the consequences of the new Emancipation Bill on its way to the floor of the United States Congress. It is 1953, and he and other council members know the bill isn't about freedom. The bill threatens the rights of Native Americans to their land and their very identity. This powerful novel explores themes of love and death with lightness and gravity, and unfolds with the elegant prose, sly humor, and depth of feeling of a master craftsman.
She's a good reader.
Yes.
She's a great writer, I think.
No one's read that one yet?
No, I have.
You have?
I think I have a copy.
You'll have to read it again.
I've reread a couple of her books.
The Miracle of Little North Horse Creek, is that the name of it? Do you know the one?
Oh, yeah, close to that.
Yeah, it's amazing, amazing story.
Mhm, mhm.
No.
I didn't get the book, but for you visual people, here's the cover for The Lost Man by Jane Harper. It says on here, 3 brothers, 1 death, no answers. So this might be another bit of a mystery.
That's the one I recommended. Australia.
Australia, set in Australian outback, 2 brothers meet at the border of their vast cattle properties in the remote Australian outback, where the 3rd brother is found dead. Something caused the middle child, who has been in charge of the family homestead, to die alone in the middle of nowhere. Amidst the grief, suspicion starts to take hold, and the eldest brother begins to wonder if more than one among them is at risk of crumbling as the weight of isolation bears down on them all. A powerful and brutal story of suspense set against a formidable landscape.
Sounds good.
It's good.
And that came out like 4 or 5 years ago.
A couple years, yeah, not sure exactly.
Is she an Australian writer?
Yes, she is, and that's all are all set in the outback.
The Australians have this strange approach to the land.
Cheryl lived there for a while.
What's the Picnic Rock? There's a movie about little girls disappearing on Picnic Rock.
Oh.
And it's like that.
Uh-huh.
And Mystery Road, the series, did anyone see that?
No, I don't.
Acorn TV.
Oh,
Streaming also.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
That's good. Very good.
That one
Judy Davis.
would be, should maybe be farther back because it is more just of a mystery.
Right,
This
yeah.
one, so
Separate it a little from the one we just read. Yeah, have you read Lost
I
Man?
haven't but read that one, but I've read other ones by her.
Are they mostly mysteries in Australia?
Yeah.
This one's been popular. Some of you may have already read it.
Yeah.
And maybe too many of you have already read it. Is there interest? It's The Midnight Library.
I just read that.
Yeah. I read
Good
it.
to listen to it on when we were driving. And we were about 2 hours into it and I looked at him and he looked at me and we both go, are you kidding this? Maybe it's because, like I said, it's sometimes different when you listen to a book as to when you read a book. Oh, when I think Our Lady on the friends on the video said that, but anyway.
Did you check if it was on shuffle? I've had that before where I play an audiobook and I realize it's on shuffle.
Oh, my God.
It doesn't make sense at all.
That'd be like
Maybe that was
a
it.
William
I don't
Faulkner
know. It didn't make any sense, but anyway, that was just my take.
All right, well, the description's short. I'll read it. We can see
Yeah,
if
there's someone on your video there.
somebody was trying to, Janet, were you trying to say something?
Well, no, go. I just read it and we're going to talk about it in the Oaks Book Club, which is new. And, but I want to hear, I liked it. I really liked it. In part, I think because of where I am in the demographic, I thought there were some interesting ideas in it, but I'd love to hear Tracy, the description.
Okay, it's kind of short, so I don't know if this will sum it up well or not. But in between life and death is a library, the Midnight Library, with books curated just for you. Nora's life has been going from bad to worse. Then, at the stroke of midnight on her last day on Earth, she finds herself transported to the library. There, she is given the chance to undo her regrets and try out each of the other lives she might have lived, which raises the ultimate question: with infinite choices, what is the best way to live?
Maybe for Halloween.
Maybe. So I don't know if there's enough interest or if too many people have already read it.
How many have read?
I think I read it. To me, it read much more like a young adult piece than, I mean, there's always things interesting, infinite choices, and look at what the choices we make, and do we actually make those choices? So I think that could be discussion, but I can't quite figure out why people have been raving about it myself. But that's me, Debbie Downer.
All right, then so we can think and talk about those fiction options for nonfiction.
Yeah, that's a killer.
Hidden Valley Road.
That's a killer.
What is it?
Hidden Valley Road. But Tracy said to me when I was checking out, oh, Hidden Valley Ranch.
I can't not think of ranch when I see the title Hidden Valley Road. Don and Mimi Galvin seem to be living the American dream. After World War II, Don's work with the Air Force brought him to Colorado, where their 12 children were born. 12. But listen, but behind the scenes was a different story. Psychological breakdown, sudden violence, and hidden abuse. It's a happy story. By the mid-70s, 6 of the 10 Galvin boys were diagnosed as schizophrenic. How could all this happen to one family? The heart-rending story of a mid-century American family that became science's great hope in the quest to understand the disease. Reads like a medical detective journey and sheds light on a topic so many face.
Does that say Oprah's book club on the front of it? Because that used to be, if I saw that, I knew I could not read it.
Oprah.
Oh, Oprah. Does it say Oprah?
Oprah says it's a riveting story about an American family that reads like a medical detective journey. That's where the quote came from. Yeah, okay.
Well, maybe not at the holidays. Maybe we could not read it at the holidays.
But the
Yeah.
She said not around the
Not over
holidays.
the holidays.
the author has done a lot and a good deal of research. So sometimes there are chapters of it telling you more about schizophrenia. I mean, if that's anything you're interested in or want to understand better, the author really does a good job of getting you through the medical and then relates it back to this family. And I mean, it's hard to believe. And what that having 6 children was, well, having 12 children alone kills me. But then to the indications of having 6 children with schizophrenia and how you continue your life with your husband and the whole 9 yards.
So when did they find out they were schizophrenic? Were they
all?
older?
No, not all of them were that old. No,
And they kept on having children.
Well, they had the 12 real pretty close together. I mean, you see this picture of them on, and she's pregnant, but you see they're all on this stair steps, and it isn't until they have their last child is a daughter. They have two children at the end, and they're daughters. And the daughters were never diagnosed.
It's usually diagnosed in their late teens and early 20s.
Oh,
It's
basically,
What
yeah.
happened to happy? Like, doesn't it?
All right. Let me get to the others.
Okay, I'll wait for that.
You have to read it.
Karen always wants happy.
Yeah.
Or quirky,
Or quirky. This one also deals with mental health, we'll say, but in a completely different way. Let me see if I can get there close enough. Maybe you should talk to someone, a therapist, her therapist, and our lives revealed. I don't know if some of you read that. No, never seen it. From a New York Times best-selling author, psychotherapist, and national advice columnist, a hilarious, thought-provoking, and surprising book that takes us behind the scenes of a therapist's world where her patients are looking for answers, and so is she. One day, Lori Gottlieb is a therapist who helps patients in her Los Angeles practice. The next, a crisis causes her world to come crashing down, and she seeks her own therapist. With startling wisdom and humor, Gottlieb invites us into her world as both clinician and patient. In this illuminating account, we see our own mysterious lives and our power to transform them.
I see it.
How many pages?
Yeah, we're the funniest.
Let me look.
Tracy will have a funny challenge.
I think the Louise Erdrich ones seem to get pretty
That was
unanimous.
that was a big head nod for
Affirmation.
most people.
I'm not
Yes,
sure about
yes,
the
yeah.
others.
And then I have one that's completely different and may fall more into a young adult type, but it is nonfiction. It's considered memoir. This would be a very short read. How to be a good creature
Interesting.
by Cy Montgomery.
Yeah, read that one for the beginning.
For January.
Yeah, right.
So we know December. That's right.
Part Indiana Jones, part Emily Dickinson. Cy Montgomery is an author, naturalist, documentary scriptwriter, and radio commentator who has traveled to some of the world's most remote wilderness for her work. In this brief yet profound memoir, she explores life-changing relationships with 13 creatures who shaped her humanity.
How to be a what?
Creature.
Good creature.
Good creature. So each chapter is a different animal.
And it's short.
Yeah.
And it's short.
Yeah.
Okay. Thoughts, votes? We were yes to Louise Erdrich.
The Night Watchman.
The last man.
The Lost Man, aye. Any thoughts on The Lost Man, the mystery in Australia?
It's good, that's like.
If we read that maybe a little later on. Midnight Library, yay, cool. None of us are sure. Anybody give me a resounding yes or no?
No.
No.
Yes. Right after this one.
All right, maybe
I can
we're.
read that one on my own.
I was gonna say, maybe we're lukewarm enough on that to not read that, and those of us that want to read it on our own, we'll discuss it separately. Thoughts on Hidden Valley Road?
Yes.
10 schizophrenic children.
Is that disturbing to read them?
I don't know and don't have anyone in my life with schizophrenia, so no, it didn't. I found it interesting. And my daughter is a therapist, so, you know, in fact, I discussed a lot of stuff with her after I read some of the medical things about schizophrenia. So no, it was not to me, but to someone else, it could be.
So Renee, so is the science actually well written and readable? Or is it kind
Yes,
of
I
like
thought it was, yes.
so it's not like a journal article then? It isn't that.
No,
deep.
because everything that he does learn, he then relates back to the family so that you can sort of, because each one of those children that are diagnosed also are diagnosed very differently. They don't all have that same sort of schizophrenia is very different.
Okay. Well, if nobody wants to read that, I'll check it out. I think it's a good book. I think I'd like to read that one. Just
Give us a report.
I'll stand up and give you a book report. I promise you.
Okay. Anyone else? Hidden Valley Road? Yes, no?
Yes, yeah. I read Hidden Valley.
Yeah.
Make it a month, 31 days.
Yeah.
What about the lighthearted therapist, her therapist, and our lives revealed?
Yeah.
Maybe we should talk.
say
That
yes.
one that you said was funny, I'll look for that
Oh,
one.
yeah.
I want some fun.
And how to be a good creature. Do we want to all talk about animals that have affected us? I'm sure we can all maybe talk about a pet too.
Yeah, that's another.
Yeah, I need to get home soon. Mine's waiting for me.
Are the animals she's talking to?
Yeah.
Are the animals that she's talking to, or did she mean like creatures like us?
No, like
No,
animals.
animals.
Yeah. Dogs and a spider and.
Have you guys done a graphic novel at all?
Yes.
Oh, yes.
Oh, you want?
Okay. Yay, nay,
Maybe.
Yeah.
maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Simple.
Around
Yeah, that
Christmas.
was our shorty.
Okay. Okay.
Read during the.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Good job, Tracy.
I do have a couple copies of Chinatown, if anybody wants them. So thank you guys for coming. Thank you, online people.
Which one do you want?
Family.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.